By the power of
Hey, Mikey.
Yes, my sweetness?
I have no idea what I want to do today. What would you like to do today, my love?
Well, whatever I want to do is whatever you want to do, darling.
And whatever I want to do is whatever you want to do, honey. So hit me with those deepest inner desires you want to invoke on this lovely morning.
Ball my eyes out.
Well, if I got just the thing for you. It's okay, darling, it's okay. It's just art. Look at this thing. Does this character look like it could bring about any sort of emotional instability or harm upon others? Well, Klonoa Door to Phantomile shows the importance of not underestimating a friendly face and the risks of inflation.
Published by Namco in 1997 for the PlayStation, this is a 2.5D platformer game in which you play as Klonoa, a sort of long-eared cat creature accompanied by a wind spirit named Hupo, and travels along 12 twisting, turning levels in the large, expansive dreamland of Phantomile. The game's director, Hideo Yoshizawa, was mainly known before this game for his work on the Ninja Gaiden series, which, if not known for their high difficulty or great soundtracks, are also known for their extensive uses of cutscenes, something that was a very uncommon practice during the NES days. With Door to Phantomile, he wanted to expand his reach beyond the hardcore player, and create a game where the story was fully interwoven in the levels, and that the story could be something that everyone, kids or adults, could enjoy.
Upon release, it did pretty well over in Japan considering the freshness of its gameplay style, while in other countries like America it initially flopped due to its cutesy sincerity in a time where radical tood ruled over most video games. Over time, however, this game has seen a major critical reevaluation, and nowadays is considered one of the best games for the original PlayStation, with a dedicated cult following that's still relatively active to this day. This large fan following led to a mainline sequel, a fair amount of handheld spin-offs, a sports game, and even a remake of the original for the Wii, but we'll get to those. Of course, with any cult classic game, that also means its limited initial run has become quite the collector's item in the modern day, going for...
Starting off with the story, we get a philosophical musing through text, presumably from Klonoa himself, and then we cut to him playing with butterflies in the field, acting all precious and adorable and stuff. Suddenly, a magical ring falls from the sky, lodging itself into the ground before Klonoa goes and plucks the mysterious ring out of the hole. Out of the ring pops this blobulous thing, which Klonoa immediately decides is his friend, and they run around playing some more in the field, until something strikes Bell Hill, causing Klonoa to eventually wake up. It seems like it was all just a dream, until the ring and the blobulous thing, named Hupo, is shown to still be with him, and something does indeed crash into Bell Hill, which the both of them decide to investigate. It's at this point where Hupo does... that. And we're off to the first level.
The game appears to have an extremely simple control scheme, with your only real options being move, jump, and attack. Your attack manifests as alluded to earlier, a way to inflate whatever cute enemy happens to come your way, which can then be thrown to destroy other enemies and interactable objects. However, what makes this cool is that on top of throwing the enemy left or right on the 2D plane, you can also throw it forward and backward to reach other interactable objects off your main path. You can also throw the enemy directly downward in order to perform a double jump, which can then be combined with a Yoshi-style flutter in order to position yourself properly. You can use all these abilities to pull off some pretty cool movement tricks in later levels, such as repeatedly grabbing enemies in order to throw Klonoa higher in the air over and over.
The levels on top of that are masterfully crafted, always coming up with ways to take the basic platforming structure and turning it on its head, sometimes literally. Though the levels are at their essence 2D, they twist and turn around gigantic set pieces, often going through themselves to create alternate pathways and clever little secrets without ever making things too obtuse. You'll often get sequences where the game outright switches things up, and has you going forward and backward through multiple planes, sometimes along a set track as a little mini-challenge. Even with all this going on, the levels are never confusing, always providing clear ways forward through these marvelous polygonal environments.
Speaking of which, the world in which you have our little dream traveler traverse in is just beautiful. The way it works is that each level has you going in and out of multiple different kingdoms, those being the Wind Village of Breezegale, the Mechanical Tree Houses of Forlock, the Water Palace of Jugpot, and the ethereal floating Sun and Moon kingdoms of Coronia and Cress. Each area contains their own unique landscape, architecture, color palette, landmarks, the works. No two areas ever end up looking the same due to how distinct the areas look. This is further added on to through level transitions that seamlessly link each level together, making the dream world of Phantomile feel even more like an actual place to adventure through.
If I may go on a side explanation, there is an official strategy guide that came with the game in Japan, and in it you can see a whole view of Phantomile in all its glory. This shows how, on top of the levels actually being the proper gateways between the kingdoms, there's a really cool symbiosis between the three grounded kingdoms. The wind blows from Breescale into Jugpot, the water flows out of Jugpot into Forelock, and wood is carried up from Forelock into Breescale. It's honestly a really cool detail you may not even notice while playing the game. And that's really my only story complaint. A lot of neat details about the lore in Phantomile are tucked away in the manuals and strategy guides, some of which didn't even make it to any of the other regions outside of Japan. While I'm all for subtlety and not revealing everything to the player, some of this stuff seems way too cool to just be left in the manual. Like a war of light and dark that occurred 3,000 years before the events of the game, which led to Gaudius being sealed away until Klonoa arrives in Phantomile. Oh, hey, speaking of Gaudius.
He's the main villain of this game, and he's easily one of the coolest and simultaneously most intimidating villains to ever come out of a platformer. The floating human face covered by a vulture-like mask, the dark cloak holding a vortex of space inside, his booming, growly voice that overpowers any other voice in the game. He looks so out of place compared to everything else, but it works, since in this dream world, he appears as something you'd likely see in a nightmare. All the designs really are spot on, striking that perfect balance between strange and appealing. Klonoa especially has a perfect design in this game. His design is positively adorable, even without being able to tell what animal he exactly is, and all the different design elements and accessories that would normally clash together work within the context of the game's art direction.
And on that note, this game looks positively fantastic. As stated before, all the environments you travel through look unique and distinct, and all the characters you meet within those worlds fit their theme really well. You've probably noticed from the footage that while the levels and boss characters are rendered with real-time 3D polygons, most of the other characters and enemies are pre-rendered models put in games as 2D sprites. The whimsical tone and style make these two contrasting styles flow together very nicely, and the rare times that the game uses FMV cutscenes doesn't look out of place in the slightest. Later on in the game, there's also some pretty cool technical trickery with the use of vector graphics and the PS1's famous Echo Inward effect. Back on track. When we get to the top of Bell Hill, we see that what crashed into Bell Hill was actually an escape pod containing someone named Bliss, and Joka and Gaudius are kidnapping her in hopes of finding the Moon Pendant, which is required to bring back the Moon Kingdom from its long hibernation. Unable to find said pendant, Gaudius leaves with Luffy in tow, and Joka, needing to stop our little rodent, summons this thing. And now it's boss battle time. The bosses in this game are okay, I guess. There's nothing really all too challenging, often having simple repeated patterns and going down after only a couple hits, making them not too notable. It's only near the end of the game where the boss fights get a bit more challenging, and even then not by too much. At least you get to hear some pretty sick music when you fight them.
Actually, all the music in this game is awesome. Seeing as there were at least 3 composers working on the soundtrack, the songs overall are very eclectic, having a wide reach in genre and atmosphere. A wide array of 80s and 90s synthesizers are common throughout the whole adventure, taking on a very astral quality, along with more natural instruments like flutes, sitars, pianos, dulcimers, and even bagpipes also getting the spotlight fairly often. While the more natural instruments are pretty clearly ripped from sample packs and the like, the way they are cut, pitched, and mixed into the compositions is really unique, and always gives off an otherworldly vibe without ever feeling like it doesn't belong in the game. Even the stranger pieces of music, like a drum and bass song out of nowhere for one of the bosses, feels consistent in tone with everything that's happening.
After you defeat Rongolingo, Joka runs off, bouncing off the bell and revealing that the Moon Pendant was being hidden within the bell the whole time. Klonoa and Hupo, deciding that they need to do something about it, go to Klonoa's grandpa for help. His grandpa recognizes the pendant as the crest of the Moon Kingdom, which had been hidden for many years. Concerned about Gaudius, Klonoa's grandpa instructs him to go to Forelock and tell their elder, Granny, about what has happened so far. And after that, surprisingly not a lot happens story-wise. It takes a backseat to let you get more invested in the gameplay, occasionally having some cute interactions here and there, and letting Klonoa defeat a couple more of Gaudius' nightmare creatures. When Klonoa meets up with Granny in Forelock, however, that's when it's discovered that Joka has figured out the Moon Pendant's whereabouts, and then it happens.
Okay, from this point forward, we can't explain the story without going heavily in the spoiler territory. heavily into some of the most infamous moments from this game. Even though these story beats have outshined the game itself in some regards, if the game looks interesting to you and you haven't played it already, please skip to here if you don't want to be spoiled. With that said, here's where the story of Klonoa Door to Phantomile truly starts to come into its own.
The pendant is still being held by Klonoa's grandpa, and Joka, finding this out, decides to go and force it from him. Klonoa goes on a mad chase back to his house, all the while continuing to have to fend off whatever Joka throws at him. It appears that Klonoa had made it just in time, but before Klonoa can rejoin his grandpa, Joka appears right behind him. He then fires a laser cannon directly at Klonoa's childhood home, burning it to the ground and leaving Klonoa's grandpa severely injured. After a fairly underwhelming fight with a creature called Palladium, Klonoa goes to check on his grandpa, and what follows is, well, just watch. This scene right here might just be one of the greatest moments to ever grace the original PlayStation. Everything about it just hits the right points to be emotionally effective, while not being the viewer over the head with the point. The song from earlier coming back in the form of a music box like lullaby. As Klonoa's grandpa speaks his last words, Klonoa clinging to his grandfather in a desperate attempt to keep him alive. When he passes away, the music cuts out, and you hear possibly the most effective use of voice acting in the entire 5th generation of video games, with Klonoa's voice actress Kumiko Watanabe sounding completely convincing in her screams of pain while speaking a completely fictional language. It's a powerful moment, and one that makes it clear that Door to Phantomile is not just a great game, but one of the most well-crafted video games of all time.
It's especially impressive considering most PlayStation voice acting sounded like this.
Spectre, what's going on here? What are you planning to do?
Spectre, oh yes. You're the monkey that performs at the amusement park.
What? He's that cute little monkey that everyone loves to come and see? But how?
Yes, that's right.
After this, the story kicks into overdrive, with Klonoa hell-bent on defeating Gaudius once and for all. With the help of a magical fish he rescued earlier, he quickly makes his way up to Coronia, the Sun Kingdom. Through the people of Coronia, he learns how Cress has been the one creating dream energy, of which creates the entirety of Phantomile. Gaudius' true intent is to wake up an old nightmare being known as Nahatum, who was brought about if a nightmare were to tear Cress out of hibernation. Klonoa goes to fight Joka, who's been tampering with the crystal keeping Coronia stable, and even though he defeats him, it's still too late, as the crystal shatters and starts harvesting energy from all 3 of the grounded kingdoms, bringing about the return of Cress, and spreading nightmare energy through the entire world.
Without many options left, Pamela helps Klonoa to reach Cress, leading to easily some of the best levels of the game, Visions 6-1 and 6-2. Hugo reveals to Klonoa that he's actually the Prince of the Moon Kingdom, and that he needs to tell Klonoa something important. It can wait though, because Klonoa has to fight Gaudius once and for all, with Gaudius remarking about a strange dream that's invading Phantomile. After traversing the Wheel of Woe and surviving Gaudius' nightmare, he's defeated, but still isn't the end. Gaudius had already awoken Nahatum, and now he must be defeated before the entirety of Phantomile fades to nothingness. Utilizing the power of all 5 kingdoms, we go through one final boss fight, weakening Nahatum from the inside and out, before Klonoa delivers one final shot to Nahatum, erasing him from existence.
Hooray! Look at that! The day is saved and Phantomile is going to go back to normal!
Phew, that's a relief. The game was getting a bit depressing with that whole grandpa dying stuff. Let's see this wonderful, adorable, happy ending.
Wait
a minute.
Wait, no, this isn't right!
Wait, they're supposed to be best friends forever.
No, stop! I can't take this!
Send our little dream traveler away.
Well, at least we can learn how to swim now. So, in the other most infamous part of this game, it's revealed that Klonoa isn't actually from the world of Phantomile, but rather a dream traveler that Hippo summoned in order to save the world from Ghadius and Nahadoom. He was never supposed to be there, and everyone else in Phantomile will now only remember him like a vague dream. As soon as this revelation hits and Klonoa starts crying his eyes out, Lafitte sings the Song of Rebirth, which undoes all the damage that Phantomile has suffered, including forcing Klonoa to God knows where, still crying as he clings for dear life as Hippo tries to save him. All of this is after he had to witness what he thought was his grandpa dying and fighting the living embodiment of nightmares. And then the game just ends right there! This game was rated E!
As jarring as this ending is, it's easily the point that stands out in people's minds the most when discussing this game, along with the other scene highlighted earlier. It's a powerful scene, done impeccably with great animation, wonderful music, well done voice acting, and it does its job in recontextualizing everything that has happened previously in your adventure. It's such a clever way to symbolize being pulled out of a dream suddenly, just as you were getting invested in it, and the fact that it shows your name as the author of your story highlights how the story was meant to be experienced by you personally. This is a game meant to tug at your heartstrings and absorb you into the world it has created, with the last line written even being for your Phantomile.
If I could summarize this game in any way, I would say that Klonoa Door to Phantomile is like the video game equivalent of a Ghibli film, aside from these two, which were literally made by Ghibli, but I mean in tone. The otherworldly nature of the setting and characters, the childlike whimsy contrasted with the darker overarching themes, the beautiful soundtrack, it all reminds me of the types of stories Ghibli would tell in all the right ways. At the same time, it doesn't feel derivative of anything else and manages to stand on its own as something amazingly timeless. This is a game that's wholly deserving of all the praise it gets these days, and I can easily call Door to Phantomile one of my favorite games of all time. It's near perfection, etched into one PlayStation disc, and it's the game that eventually led me to the love of my life.
The Klonoa series led me on a lifelong journey, but also led me to the love of my life. Ever since I discovered the titular character through the opening of Namco x Capcom, the series had become the most important to me, not only because of the nostalgia factor, and not even just because of the games themselves, but what discovery led to in my life. It inspired me to write my first fanfic, one which I'm not terribly proud of, but got me started somewhere in writing. It led me to an online Klonoa community and Untamed Heart Klonoa forums, now Untamed Heart Klonoa Collective, where I was first introduced to a ton of interesting people and built a lot of good memories. This eventually led me to Discord and the Klonoa Mega Chat, which, after a few years, led me to my dear cat face, and I couldn't be luckier for this to happen thanks to Klonoa. Although I wouldn't complain if something new related to Klonoa ever happened, like anytime soon, or ever. Please, Bandai Namco gods, I'm begging you, please release the cabin from gay baby jail.
Aw, don't worry, darling. Klonoa Encore already has a release date of... so we can enjoy all these other Klonoa games in the meantime. Like, let's see here, this one.
Oh god, I take it back.